Hi everyone, it's Ardith, and today I'm keeping it real by showing you how I made the best of a good idea that really didn't want to cooperate. Does that ever happen to you? Let's go back for a sec. Recently, Ingrid and I did a collaboration to show you 10 Christmas card ideas. I'll link to my video above, and you can watch it and then hop to Ingrid's channel from there if you want. Today's card is inspired by one of Ingrid's cards. Ingrid used this stencil from Catherine Pooler Designs that was released earlier this year, and she created little ornaments from some of the shapes. Clever, right? When I looked at the stencil, I saw a different ornament shape, and that's where this card started. To isolate the ornament for ink blending, I placed the stencil down on a stack of full-back sticky notes and drew the outline before cutting it out. I made sure to cut about 4 out because I'll be ink blending through them, and I may need more than one if the ink saturates the thin paper of the sticky note. I love getting more out of my supplies, and using just parts of a stencil to create something different is a great way to do that. But now that Ingrid had given me this great idea, I wasn't exactly sure what to do with it. I played around with the idea of just doing one ornament, or maybe 3, or maybe a row of them, but I finally decided to create an all-over pattern. I did it row by row. I placed the stencil down on my white cardstock panel, making sure it was straight and centered. I used some pixie spray to help keep it in place. Then I placed a negative mask around the area I wanted to ink blend through, and I got out 2 red inks. I started with Samba, which is a bright, almost orangey red, and I used a dome blender to put the ink down. Then I came back in with Rouge, which is a deeper shade of red, and I blended just along the bottom left area of the ornament to try and create a shadow and the look of dimension. Then I moved the mask to the next ornament on the row, and I did the same ink blending there. Now the stencil has rows of ornaments built right in, but I decided I wanted to space my ornaments differently. So after I finished each row, I lifted the stencil and placed it back down so that the next row of ornaments would be offset a bit. I just had to eyeball the spacing and be sure to try and keep the rows as straight as I could. Then I filled in the next row of ornaments with the same inking method. You can see that my mask is getting pretty saturated with the ink, so as I moved on I changed out the masks so I wouldn't end up with red ink where I didn't want it. And here's the completed panel. I think the pattern is really cool, but I wasn't really sure that it looked anything like ornaments. So I thought about that for a while, and then I found this little ornament hanger stamp in the Most Wonderful Time of the Year set. I prepped the panel with an anti-static pouch so that I could heat emboss the hangers with silver embossing powder. And then I stamped each one with Wow embossing ink, just using an acrylic block. You could of course use your MISTI for this, but you would either have to move the stamp or the panel, so I figured this would be quicker. It just meant I needed to be sure that my ink pad was juicy and I got a good impression the first time. I poured the silver embossing powder over the whole panel and shook off the excess before heating it with my heat gun in my foil-lined lid. This meant I wasn't trying to hang on to the very edges of the panel while it was getting hot, and hopefully the foil helped reduce the warping too. I'm never really sure about that, but this panel stayed pretty flat. For my sentiment, I wanted something quite bold and simple and graphic to go with my geometric pattern. Nothing scripty or too pretty. I chose this Merry Christmas from Ellen Hutson's 'Tis the Season set, and I stamped it with Onyx ink onto a 1/2-inch strip of white cardstock that I stuck to the mouse pad with some temporary adhesive to hold it in place. This time I did use my MISTI in case I needed to restamp it, but I got it the first time. Now here's where I noticed a couple of spots of red ink that had escaped from my masks. Normally, smudges on my card would dictate my sequin placement, but I hadn't planned on sequins, and the placement of the marks was not going to work anyway. So I got out my sand eraser to try and get rid of them. I find that this doesn't always work. Maybe I'm just too nervous about wearing a hole through my cardstock, but they weren't disappearing. So I got out my white gel pen and I used it to cover them up. Now I wouldn't try this with a big spot, but with these little tiny marks it seemed to work just fine. To assemble the card, I created a white card base from Neenah 110-pound cardstock and creased it with my scoring tool. I find if I do both the front and the back, the card will generally lie flat and cooperate for its photo shoot. Then I placed the panel on a black mat that was trimmed slightly bigger, and I finally placed the sentiment down on top. I added lots of glue on the back, and I used the grid on my work surface to position it on the card base before pressing it down. I think now that maybe I should have stopped there, but I was still thinking that the pattern didn't really look like ornaments, and I thought that adding some sparkle to the centers might help. I got out some raspberry jewels from Pretty Pink Posh, and I used a jewel picker and liquid glue to attach them. I finished the card, and I did its first photo shoot, and I felt like using the smallest jewels had been a mistake. Don't get me wrong, they're very pretty, but they didn't have a lot of presence, and they didn't seem to make the pattern look any more like ornaments. So off camera, I redid the jewel bit, this time with the largest graphite jewels. And these guys definitely have presence, but I'm still not sure that they helped with making the pattern look a lot like ornaments. In the end, I think I can live with the idea that this is a very pretty and festive pattern, especially in red. And if the recipient looks closely and sees ornaments in the pattern, well then that's a bonus. What do you think? I'd love to hear what kinds of things you try when a card is not cooperating with you. Let me know in the comments below. Card making doesn't always go the way we think it will, and having some flexibility to adapt your plan as you work can help to keep it fun. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up below and subscribe for more inspiration. Supplies are listed below in the description and also on my blog. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.